Hello and welcome back to another PAP Reports. Today is Monday the 20th of January 2020 and today we're going to start with something a little different. Generally, although I don't set out to, we report of stories of police issues, and although the channel is called Police Abusing Powers, it's never really been solely about the police, but rather all those in positions of authority, be they police, security, social services, enforcement officers, schools and even councils. And that's exactly where we're going to start today, with Dublin City Council and the story that a council clean-up crew removed the homeless man's tent with the man still inside. Yes, with the man still inside. Now, I can understand how the weight of the tent or the sight of a fully grown man may confuse some people, but this is ridiculous, especially as it's left the man needing surgery for life-changing injuries. Now, it's said that the Irish police are looking into the matter. No jokes. But let's face it, the council and the police work hand in hand, which will make holding anyone to account very difficult. Thankfully, the man, whose name is unknown, is in a stable condition, but his injuries are serious. The council are reported to have said that the tent had been placed in precarious and dangerous location. The council added, the executive has been engaging with the individual for some time and accommodation remains available to him. Every action that is taken by state services is taken in the interest of the health and safety of those individuals experiencing homelessness. The matter is currently being investigated by the police and there will be no further comment, which obviously means we can't say anything else in case we incriminate ourselves. Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar said that it was his understanding the Council and Waterways Ireland did check the tents before removing them, but obviously something has gone wrong here. No shit. I mean, how the hell is it even possible to take a tent down and discard it without knowing there's a person inside? Now, let's get back to what we're also accustomed to here on PAP Reports. If you knew that a convicted paedophile was living on your street and you had serious concerns about the safety of yours and everyone else's children, would you agree to sign a non-disclosure agreement to not tell anybody what you knew? I sure as shit wouldn't, but it's been reported that Claire Varin, a mother of two, was made to sign one after making that very discovery about one of her new neighbours. Now, before you take to the pitchforks, Claire Varin was under the conditions of Sarah's Law, officially known as the Child Sex Offender Disclosure Scheme, which was introduced following the abduction and murder of Sarah Payne by paedophile Roy Whiting in 2000, was made to sign the NDA, preventing her from warning any of her neighbours. However, after neighbours did find out, Claire was taken to court. Claire said she became suspicious of the new neighbour after he knocked and asked her if her 8-year-old daughter would like to go berry picking with him. Most likely, he tried the same line on other neighbours, which is what gave him away. Now, the charges against Claire for breaching the NDA were eventually dropped, but following the ordeal, Ms. Varin separated from her partner and moved away from the street that she lived on. Claire said, "We were just left to deal with this information. We were told a paedophile had moved onto the street and we were expected to just live with it. The person who is disclosed to, how can you sit back and just watch them interact with children? You are just as bad then. It is on your conscience. All I had done was what anyone else would have done." And rightly so, Claire. I think anyone who would rather allow a paedophile to live near their kids or anyone else's kids without telling the parents than get convicted of breaking a non-disclosure agreement, which is not really a criminal matter, actually deserves to go to prison. It's said that from the year Sarah's Law was introduced to the last financial year, almost 9,000 applications were made by members of the public based on the replies from 22 police forces who supplied comparable data. That's 22 out of 45 forces. And with the incomplete data from the remaining forces, meaning the total number of applications from across the period could be at least as high as 16,900. Mr. Finelater, who sat on the panel as a consultant to the government before Sarah's Law became law, said, "Right now there are approximately 59,000 people on the sex offender register, but that is simply a fraction of those who represent a risk to children. Just telling a parent this person is not on the register is not telling people not to worry." Now, an inquiry lasting 3.5 years into systematic failings over an investigation into serial killer Stephen Port came to an end last July when the IOPC cleared 17 police officers of misconduct. The allegations were that a series of cock-ups may have hindered the investigation into Stephen Port, who went on what's been called a year-long killing spree, where he murdered 4 people before he was finally caught in September 2015. 44-year-old Stephen Port from Barking, East London, was jailed for life in 2016 after being convicted of murdering 4 young men by giving them overdoses of a date-rape drug. It is now alleged that the IOPC investigation was a whitewash after all of the officers involved were cleared of any wrongdoing. The IOPC said its probe had identified systematic failings within the Metropolitan Police, and 9 officers had been told to improve their standards. However, a barrister has revealed that former partner of one of Port's victims is sending a dossier on the watchdog's handling of the case to MPs investigating the running of the IOPC. Anton van Dellen, who is representing Ricky Wormsley, who had a relationship with Mr Whitworth, one of Port's victims, said, "My client will be submitting evidence to the Home Affairs Select Committee on the following in their investigation into the IOPC. Failure to engage with him, failure to respond to correspondence, failure to interview under caution, failure to recommend disciplinary action, and the length of time taken to conclude the investigation." The Metropolitan Police made a referral to the IOPC in October 2015 after identifying concerns about the initial investigations into the men's deaths. An inquest next January into the deaths of Port's 4 murder victims will examine in detail alleged police failings. In response to questions about the Port case, the IOPC said, "Our investigation report will be published at the conclusion of all proceedings." All 17 officers provided written accounts. 1 officer was not interviewed because their written account was sufficient. 1 gave answers to questions in interview. 15 officers gave no answers to any questions during interviews. When asked why it took so long to finish its inquiry, the IOP added, "Certain aspects of our investigation could not be completed until the criminal proceedings were concluded." Now, this next report is going to get me some grief, no doubt, for reporting on, but it's news and needs reporting. We all know about the Rotherham child abuse scandal, so many young people having their lives ruined by nothing short of animals with no morals or concern about the children's lives they were destroying. Well, it's been alleged that an unnamed police chief has admitted to ignoring the abuse, saying that, with it being Asians, we can't afford for this to come out. Allegedly stating that the force knew the abuse had been taking place for about 30 years. A woman who was abused as a child made complaints against the force, with the IOPC upholding 6 complaints from her, according to a leaked confidential report quoted by The Times. Now, we have to be careful with these leaked reports as they're likely to not be confirmed as legitimate, so we have to take them at sort of face value at the moment. Although it's reported that the IOPC said it was very clear that you were sexually exploited by Asian men and upheld a complaint that police took insufficient action to prevent you from harm. The Times state that the confidential report included an alleged admission that an officer allegedly told a missing child's father the town would erupt if people knew Asian men were routinely having sex with underage white girls, it has been claimed. A chief inspector, who the Times said the IOPC had been unable to identify, is alleged to have said the force was aware abuse had been taking place for some 30 years, adding, "With it being Asians, we can't afford for this to be coming out." The girl's father said a senior officer had spoken about his daughter as though she was an adult doing it of her own free will, and that he confronted the policeman to say she was a child and this was child abuse. IOPC Director of Major Investigations, Steve Noonan, said, "We are continuing to make significant progress with Operation Linden, and we've completed more than 90% of the inquiries we have identified so far. A small number of investigation reports still need to be completed, and our investigation into the actions of the former senior command team at South Yorkshire Police during the period of our investigation continues and is progressing well. Our priority throughout the investigation has and always will be the welfare of the many survivors of child sexual abuse we have been engaging with." Problem is, Steve Noonan, there shouldn't have to be survivors, at least not as many as there are. It's just typical reactionary response from officials rather than a proactive one that should have prevented most of the victims from becoming victims in the first place. Operation Linden was launched in 2014 with the IOPC conducting 91 independent investigations into the allegations that senior officers failed in their statutory duty to protect children between 1999 and 2011. Last year, 6 men were jailed for sexual exploitation of young girls in Rotherham. Mohammed Imran Ali Akhtar, 37, Nabil Khurshid, 35, Iqlaq Yousaf, 34, Tanwir Ali, 37, Salah Ahmed El Hakam, 39, and Asif Ali, 34, were sentenced to between 10 and 23 years at Sheffield Crown Court. In 2018, the BBC reported that the men, who were all of British Pakistani heritage, targeted and groomed the girls, who were aged between 13 and 16, over 7 years between 1998 and 2005. One victim says police should face criminal charges for aiding and abetting abuse of hundreds of children. However, I very much doubt any of the police involved will ever hear the phrase Section 26 of the Criminal Justice and Courts Act 2015. The woman, who received the 13-page report after first making the complaints in 2014, said, "Children were sacrificed by the failings of the police." She told the PA news agency, "I always thought that maybe the police didn't understand what was happening until I got the report. And now I finally understand that they knew exactly what was going on." The woman told a PA reporter that she was very upset when reading the report and said, "It doesn't matter what colour a perpetrator is, they should all be treated the same." Which is a sentiment that mirrors exactly my own. Last week, there was a report based on Freedom of Information requests that more than 2,000 killers, paedophiles and rapists were allowed entry into the UK with zero criminal record checks over the past 3 years. However, those figures only cover those who have got into trouble with UK police, meaning the actual number is almost certainly much, much higher. Now, there is an existing system in place to check details of criminal convictions that is shared throughout the EU. But this system can only be used once someone has already entered the country and been arrested. Home Secretary Priti Patel says tougher border rules will be introduced to make it easier to exclude criminals. Yeah, well done, Priti. Don't you think it's a bit late now? You've already let thousands in? Criminals who are on parole in their own country, including murderers and other killers, must inform their probation worker or equivalent if they plan to go abroad, even if it's only for a holiday. Now, this means that the authorities know when a serious criminal is planning to travel, and where they feel there is a danger, they will tip off another member state. Now, I wonder how, then, if these countries are so well informed themselves, that 827 killers, 714 rapists and 482 child abusers were caught from 2016 to 2018. Note that burglars and robbers were not included in the FOI request responses. It was said that some of the non-EU nationals would have taken advantage of a visa waiver programme from a trusted country, such as the United States or Canada, meaning they didn't have to declare previous convictions. Even if they had to apply for a visa, they would have been able to stay silent about their crimes. Now, it's funny how that doesn't necessarily work the other way round. Now, the UK receives information on an entirely ad hoc basis. When EU nationals arrive at a border, they're checked against a watch list of suspected terrorists and foreign criminals compiled by the border agency. However, unless an offender is high profile, is known to have committed crimes in 7 countries, or is on the Interpol wanted list, then the system is very unlikely to be aware of their previous convictions. But even if someone has known convictions, currently under EU rules, they cannot automatically be refused entry unless they pose a genuine and serious threat. And who, pray tell, Priti Patel, makes a decision as to whether they are genuine and serious threats? Border staff? The police? Their next victim, maybe. Priti Patel said Brexit gives us a once-in-a-generation opportunity to bring in the robust border security the British people demand. But will that chance be taken, Priti? Or will you, like the rest of the woke establishment, decide that it's not fair, or it's racist, or it's against their human rights to disallow them entry? Because I bet, sure as shit, someone will pipe up and argue that these people have a right to come into the UK to rape, murder and assault people. Now we're heading over to Carlisle, where Carlisle's most senior judge has torn the local police force a new arsehole after they failed to arrest Neil Pantin for breaching bail conditions not to contact his estranged wife 13 times. Judge Davies said, astonishingly, despite you admitting the breach of your bail conditions, you were not arrested and put in custody. I require the prosecution and the police to explain that to me. I will have it explained to me. People who are victims of domestic violence will get this court's protection. You may not have hit her or caused her physical injury, but you caused persistent and continuous psychological injury of a completely extreme type. Judge Peter Davies highlighted the issue as he passed sentence on 38-year-old Neil Pantin, who admitted stalking his estranged wife Heather and subjecting her to coercive and controlling behaviour, leaving her so traumatised, it said, that she tried to kill herself. While Judge Davies jailed the defendant for 27 months, Cumbria Police refused to comment, other than to say, His Honour Judge Davies's comments have been duly noted, and we're in the process of reviewing our response to any reported breaches of bail. It is therefore not appropriate to comment further at this time. Cumbria Police take all reports of domestic abuse seriously and do the utmost to protect victims. In these cases, bail conditions are there to protect the public, and we will review this case. I, for one, would love to hear the excuse for ignoring his arrest 13 times. 30-year-old former PC Andrew Brooks from Maidstone in Kent has been found guilty in a misconduct hearing for gross misconduct after spending the night with a vulnerable 16-year-old while she was missing and then pressuring her to conceal his identity. Brooks admitted he had gone back to his home in Maidstone with the girl in July 2018 after meeting her on his way home from a pub at 2 a.m. on the 14th of July 2018, stating that he believed her to be 19 or 20, but denied pressuring her to cover his tracks. Brooks said he met the girl who he took home to the home he shared with his wife while his wife was out of town. They spent the night together before Brooks became concerned his wife would return and find them. So they left the property and went to a local park. During this time, the girl, who was only identified as Miss X, took a call from someone who appeared to be asking where she was. The hearing was told that it was indeed a family member who was trying to find her, but Brooks told the hearing he didn't think there was anything untoward about the call. John Goss, counsel who made the case against the ex-police officer, told the hearing, "We say at this point he had all of the information that he needed to reach the conclusion that she was missing and that she was a vulnerable person." Brooks said he did not at the time, but the panel ruled, with his training as a police officer, his failure to make further inquiries at this point was an error of judgment. By the time Brooks and Miss X parted company, she had been missing for 18 hours. By the Tuesday evening, Brooks had found out that police had visited her house. Kent Police had gone to her home to speak with her about her disappearance. He texted her, "Can you please promise me that this won't get back to me? I will lose everything." Miss X told him it wouldn't. The panel said that he should know from his police training that forcing a child to lie could cause serious emotional harm and abuse. "Why are the police involved? Is it because you went missing?" he texted her at the time, which Mr. Goss said demonstrated Brooks knew police were involved and knew there was a missing person investigation. Mr. Goss said, as a police officer, based on her age and the phone call in the park, he should have been thinking safeguarding, should have been thinking vulnerable. Brooks was arrested at his home in August 2018 in relation to what had happened in Miss X's disappearance and temporarily suspended before returning to active duty. No further action was taken in that investigation, but he attended a misconduct interview in December 2018. He resigned from the Met last year. Mr. Goss said the parents would have needed information about what happened when she went missing, but instead of coming forward, Brooks was more focused on protecting himself than safeguarding this child, a theme similar to most police. Brooks, surprise, surprise, pointed to his mental health struggles at the time and said he had felt there was nothing wrong. The misconduct panel concluded that Brooks had aimed for a relationship with Miss X that went beyond keeping her as someone to speak to, including sexual activity based on messages he sent her that included telling her that he had a thing for her and he was thinking about her. While Brooks did not breach police standards by kissing the girl in the park, the panel found he did pressure Miss X to conceal his identity despite her being vulnerable, and in doing so had committed gross misconduct. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Please like, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police and other officials.
Good night, all.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.